Hello and welcome to another Read With Me session. I'm yours truly, Isabel Bedell, and I'm here to read with you how to win friends and influence people. Now, we started this year by doing weekly recap sessions within our community, but we've decided to, at least I decided, to go back to the original model of actually doing daily read with me's. The reason being is because over the last year, all of 2022, every single day I was reading. Maybe I missed 1 or 2 or 3 days that I wasn't reading every single day, but I still posted every single day. Now, with that in mind, I want to continue that because that habit, I've been trying to fight it off, because it's a lot of work to show up every single day. But you know what? It's a new habit that I've really loved. And reading has truly improved my life significantly, and I want to pay it forward. I want to definitely showcase the fact that I do enjoy reading. I love this channel because it has helped me become a better reader. And it's also part of why we do what we do. You know, we believe that impacting 4 billion souls all over the world through personal and financial freedom is the key to living a life filled with abundance, filled with love, filled with freedom. And that's what we're all about here on this channel. If you're new, welcome. This is Billionaireette. I'm one of the founders here at Billionaireette. My name is Isabel Bedell, and I do the financial freedom portion of the 2 monthly books that we read every single month. One is on personal freedom and the other one is on financial freedom. Sometimes the books intertwine with one another, but we're here to make it happen because everything in life is intertwined, right? Especially when you're living your purpose and you're living your truth and you're committed to growth. That's what really matters on this channel. If you're committed to growth, welcome. If you're not committed to growth, well, welcome as well. This is a channel that may open your mind. It may increase your awareness. It may help you see things in a different light, and that's what we're here to do. So without further ado, we are on chapter 3 of How to Win Friends and Influence People. It starts with connect with core desires. In early 2002, Time put an odd-looking computer on its cover. It had a small, domed base and a jointed, shiny chrome neck affixed to a flat screen monitor that enabled it to be pulled, turned, lowered, or even raised with the nudge of a finger. It was called the iMac. And the company introducing it, Apple Computer, desperately needed it to actually work in order to stay in business. Apple had always been the darling of a particular computing niche, generally creative, anti-establishment types. But in the article that accompanied the cover story, its CEO Steve Jobs enunciated a brand new vision for consumers. He said he believed the future lay in the PC as the digital hub of camcorders, digital cameras, MP3 players, Palm PDAs, cell phones, and DVD players. He risked the company's future on a vision of a place where an entire digital life could be consolidated. And so with the iMac came a free suite of software that today is synonymous with the digital age: iTunes, iPhoto, iMovie. Critics and competitors mocked Jobs. Some of Apple's longtime rivals called the computer clownish and silly, and the vision was far too grand. The public? Well, they embraced the vision and the life that is promised. And the Apple computer, now simply Apple, has its share price increase 4,856%. 4,856% increase. The closest competitor has increased approximately 14%. Well, why? Why all of this? Is it because other computer companies prefer no one buy their products? Of course not. They all want to be successful. They all want to be well liked. What they are after is far more of influence in the form of people consuming their products. The difference is that Steve Jobs recognized something that Dale Carnegie championed repeatedly. To influence others, you have to act. You must first connect to a core desire within them. This is a universal truth, whether you are dealing with children or clients or calves. One day, the famous philosopher Ralph Waldo Emerson and his son were trying to get a calf into the barn. It was going rather poorly. They pushed and the calf pulled. They pulled and the calf pushed. Meanwhile, their housemaid noticed their predicament. And though she couldn't write brilliant essays or books, she possessed an insight that she thought might solve the problem. She walked over to the calf and put her finger on its mouth. While the calf suckled, she gently led it to the barn. What did the maid know that the luminous philosopher had forgotten? She knew that one of the calf's core desires was food. Once she tapped into that desire, the calf willingly followed. Emerson and his son merely thought about what they desired. The calf in the barn so they could eat their lunch. But the calf, happily grazing in a green pasture, had little interest in descending into a dark, confined barn to be curdled into dining options. That is, until the housemaid showed up, offered her her finger, and reminded the calf that some warm milk was in her future. It is an excellent metaphor because it reminds us of two key insights we often overlook when trying to influence others. That is so powerful. That is so powerful. Number one, influence requires more intuition than intellect. The critical contrast between the luminary Emerson and the humble housemaid is not one of dissimilar brainpower. While Emerson was likely to be learned of the two, the difference between them was one of intuition. The housemaid had what Emerson lacked. The public world tends to be freely ascribe away to those in lofty positions that require much education and aptitude. The CEO, department chair, physician, and billionaire. We assume such people can move majorities with a whisper and the snap of a finger. But as Guy Kawasaki, former chief evangelist of Apple, pointed out, if such a person does not have a deep relationship with people, she won't have much influence with them. That's true. The truth is that such stately individuals possess merely above average conditions to influence, while the way in which influence is won remains no different for them than anyone else. Influence is no respecter of education or experience, and it goes only with the only one who will set aside his status, and be it high and mighty or low and lowly, and put himself in the place of another. And to do so takes a shrewd and a spontaneous ability to read beneath the surface of an interaction, which is essential, wrote Antoine de Saint, is invisible to the eye. This is an important truth to keep in mind when dealing with those you would like to win over. So influence others is not a matter of outsmarting them. It is a matter of discerning what they truly want and offering it to them in a mutually beneficial package. He knows so little and accomplishes so much. Robert McFarland, the third of President Reagan's 6 national security advisors, once marveled of his boss. Now, when Reagan left Washington more popular than he first took office, he accomplished something that hadn't been done since Dwight Eisenhower. How? According to President Obama, Reagan recognized the American people's hunger for accountability and change. He tapped into what people were already feeling. So, number one is all about making sure that you can influence people, and that requires intuition. So, being able to understand the intellect amongst people, and being able to really be humble enough to connect with people versus telling them what it is. So what Reagan was able to do was tap into what people already were feeling, which goes into point number 2. Influence requires a gentle hand. There were Emerson and his son in a 4-handed, 8-legged tug-of-war with an obstinate half who was holding his ground and in no way to sway another to your side. So onto the scene is a great contrast strides the housemaid with an index finger extended and straight and not hooked, no less. And the once stubborn calf is suddenly light on its hooves and willingly wrapped around the housemaid's pointer. Lest we forget, it is a memorable image of what little moving we have to do to move another action to action. Ooh, let us not forget, this is so powerful. It is a memorable image of what little moving we have to do to move another person into action. That's strong. As a constant reminder, former U.S. President Dwight Eisenhower displayed a paperweight in the Oval Office that said in Latin, gently in manner, strong in deed. And there's absolutely no question of his global influence. Action springs from what we fundamentally desire. And the best piece of advice which can be given to the would-be persuaders would be in business, in home, in the schools, in politics. It is first arouse in the other person an eager want, and he who can do this has the whole world with him. He who cannot walks lonely away. The practice of connecting with core desires is applicable across industry lines and international borders. It is as important for the energy executive from Holland as it is the executive producer in Hollywood. And the interpersonal efforts that inevitably succeed are those in which the messenger stops dictating and starts discovering what the recipient wants. The interpersonal efforts that inevitably fail, be they corporate collaboration, personal cooperation, or artistic rendering, are those in which the messenger attempts to tell the recipient what he wants, and this is perhaps no more evident than in the sales industry and in the industry of which, in a somatic scene, we all are part. In his book, Killing the Sale, bestseller Todd Duncan describes the 10 fatal mistakes salespeople make, and one of them he calls arguing. And when we fail to connect with another's core needs, we are just as guilty of it, whether or not we call selling our profession. He mentions the mistake of arguing. It is actually staking your sales success on your ability to state your case in a convincing manner. It's mastering a monologue and then expecting the jury of your prospects to be convinced to take your side. But establishing an initial level of trust takes more than flowery monologue. It takes dialogue. It takes actual conversation. There is no other way for you to know your product or service to meet another person's if you don't understand their needs. He later cites Dr. Theodore Zeldin, an author of the Conversation book. He makes a point to have real conversations catch on fire. It is mind-boggling that despite the millions of branding and marketing dollars spent every year, much is still spent on messengers, wants, or whimsies rather than the recipient's core desires. We get an idea in our head for who we want to be or how we want others to perceive our offering, and we spend more time shaping and shining that image than we do asserting whether the image really matters to those to whom it must matter. Most individuals and organizations invest more resources in campaigning than in connecting. That's a good one, and I believe that is true. It should be the other way around. Consider the comparison chart. Duncan offers juxtaposing what the other two forms of interpersonal communication say about you. So dialogue equals monologue, considerate means conceited, authentic means fake, transparent means manipulative, secure means needy, interested in meeting needs means interested in making money, and builds trust means tension. Of course, connecting to people's core desires does not mean that the world will be your oyster. Suffice it to say that without this approach, others will remain largely unapproachable, their ears will close, and their eyes will look elsewhere for something or someone more engaging. And there are options. They're endless. Fortunately, most corporate emails and company tweets, brand blog entries, and commercial ad campaigns that are monologues meant to broadcast opinions, distinguish brands, launch products, and construct personas. It is precisely because this is so that the person who speaks in a spirit of dialogue and altruistic discovery nabs a significant advantage. And how do you know if you hold this advantage? Well, on honesty, inventory of your impact is usually enough. Have your employees really stepped it up, or do they remain in a cycle of fits and falters? You are confident that your marriage is on an upswing. But what does your spouse say? You insist that customers are impressed by your new products. Does your sales revenue concur? You say your brand is sweeping the nation, but against what standard are you measuring brand recognition? The 7 Arts of Change author David Shaner clarifies the difference between those who truly connect with core desires and those who are merely playing influence the way kids play doctor. He mentions, Nearly every study of organizational change over the past 2 decades indicates that companies fail to make the change they intend approximately 70% of the time. Before organizational change can succeed, it must first occur at the subtle spiritual level in the individuals of the organizations, and all lasting transformation must begin there, because ultimately, your spirit and mind is the primary driver of all of our behaviors. True change is born of an interpersonal reach that takes hold of the deepest part of an individual, and Shanner's explanation is dead on, and he should know. His company Connect Consulting has for 30 years helped multinational corporations such as Duracell, Ryobi, Mark USA, and SVP Worldwide lead successful company change efforts. His words remind us that no company-wide campaign or individual communication strategy garners influence until it connects with people at its core. It is an essential principle in all of our efforts to influence others, whether your audience is a 5-year-old or 5,000 employees. A former U.S. Secretary of Education once recounted how he didn't learn this essential element of engagement until after his first year on the job. He felt pretty good about his progress. He'd even ventured out and given speeches, and people had applauded and smiled. He attended many dinner parties and sumptuous gatherings, and all seemed to go off without a hitch. But to what end? While home over Christmas with time to reflect, he came to acknowledge that while he'd been highly visible and highly promissory, nothing in the department really had changed. 5,000 employees showed up on time. They completed their assignment work. They went home. There was movement, but few, if any, were moved inside or out the office walls. He wanted to understand why. Over the first 2 months of the following year, he spent a lot of time with the people who really ran the Department of Education, the career civil service workers who pressed forward no matter which political party filed the White House. He came to a sobering realization that while he stood on the bridge turning the wheel wasn't even connected to anything below. And since he had no authority to hire or fire the civil ranks, the only way he could influence positive progress in the department was winning them over. The problem was that they'd seen politicians come and go. They'd grown tired and cynical, and they'd already given up on deriving inspiration from the top. The secretary's wife suggested the way to win them over was reminding them that he was passionate about education, and to do so, not with words, but with new actions. Go to schools. Spend time with kids. Do retail. Everyone will notice because these are things that they really care about. I don't do retail, he huffed. I'm the Secretary of Education. I do wholesale. And then his wife was like, listen here, the daughter of a salesman. She was like, darling, if you can't do retail, you would never do wholesale. She was right, and the secretary knew it. For the next year, he toured the country, rolled up his sleeves, read stories, listened to teachers, and was reminded how much he loved retail education. It was a personal victory. More significant, however, was the effort, the effect his actions had on his employees. Their passion was revived, passion for their daily tasks, for better education, for more opportunities, for more families. They were inspired by the secretary's work because his actions had accomplished something that the speeches and sumptuous gatherings had not. They had tapped a core desire of the tireless Department of Education workers, which was purpose. They wanted to believe again. They just needed to be reminded that their work still mattered. The secretary offered this reminder, and it dramatically turned the tide. In our rushed world, it is easy to forgo the secretary level of analysis. So much of our digital communication is one way that we come to believe that we have limited opportunity to uncover another person's perspective. While we communicate with more and more people every day, we also become more insular in our approach. We are far more inclined to focus on how we can best broadcast our points from our own perspective quickly, broadly, or both. It's not that this is what we witness all around us, isn't it? It is easy to get so caught up in the fray that we forget what we are aiming for, which is connection, influence, agreement, collaboration. We can start to believe the battle is won by mere frequency and occasionally originality, useful strategies in the right context, but greatly insufficient as your only influence strategies. There's a good side, however, to this constant barrage of one-sided broadcasting, which spans the spectrum from corporate posturing to celebrity positioning. And today, with a few keystrokes, we can better educate ourselves about other people's perspectives and goals. Earlier, we discussed the dangers of using your digital space to spout off your complaints. And most of us are more discerning about what we divulge. We reveal what matters to us, what we often think about, what we love and like and hope to see soon. These titty bits of information add to a body of knowledge that offers clues or even clear windows to our core desires. This knowledge is invaluable where influence is concerned because, like the calf that just wanted more food, we only move toward what moves us. That was powerful. And that concludes part 1 of how to win friends and influence people. That was chapter 3. And wow, what such a brilliant way to, remind ourselves of, like, you have to understand what influences others. I hear a lot of people saying like, oh, I'm not a salesperson, I'm not a salesperson, I'm not a salesperson. But when it comes to getting what you want, what is it that you're doing? You're selling someone on your conviction. You're selling someone on your needs or your wants or your desires, your ideas. So in order for that to actually happen and become a reality, it takes more than just you to make it a reality. So what a beautiful chapter. It's Dale Carnegie's style of information, but because it's so expanded and read in a different light, you get a different perspective of how it's actually perceived, which I really appreciate because nowadays, if you turn on the radio, I mean, the music sucks. If you turn on the TV, there's a lot of negativity, So in order for us to stay sane and focused and really deliver the message that is intentional and true to our desires, we must understand what other people are thinking and actually understand the truth. And that's done by connection, by actually doing physical things, going out there and learning more, getting to know people face to face. It's so important. So without further ado, I'll see you in the next video where we go over part 2, 6 ways to make a lasting impression. And there's about 4 chapters to that part 2. I'll see you in the next Read With Me session. I'm yours truly, Isabel Vidal, and it feels really, really good to read with you. See you later.